من لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. فإنشاءالله we'll continue with reading from the book known as شرح اصول اعتقاد أهل السنة والجماعة, or the explanation of the fundamentals of the aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that was authored by Al-Imam Abil Qasim Hibatullah ibn al-Hasan ibn Mansur al-Tabari al-Lalaka'i, قد يقال الطبرستاني, لا الطبري al-Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the year 418 after the Hijrah. And we're still in that chapter, ذكر ما ورد في سياق من حفظ السنة وأحياها ودعا إليها, the context surrounding that what was mentioned about those who preserve the Sunnah and revive the Sunnah and call to the Sunnah. And we're coming up at the end of this second chapter of the author, the first one in which he actually presents narration. So the first chapter was just mentioning the names of some of the imams of the different regions, the different imams of the Sunnah in these different regions, from these different generations, from the Sahaba, Tabi'een, Atba' Tabi'een, who were they and what were their regions, or the areas where they were known at, or popular in, or attributed to. And then there was this chapter that we're in now, which is officially the second chapter, but the first chapter in which he actually brings narrations. And we see that this chapter had some length to it, right? This chapter, we're already at narration 50. And if I'm not mistaken, there's 57 or 56 in this chapter. 1, 2, 3, 56, 57, 58 narrations in this chapter. So that's a chapter with some length to it. And it's a beautiful way to begin his book, encouraging us to preserve the information that he's going to mention. This information about the Sunnah. What is the reward of the people who preserve this information? And what is the reward of those who revive this information, right? You take some of this information that you learn here and you go and spread it somewhere else. And what is the reward of, or implement it somewhere else? And what is the reward of those who actually call to this information? You take some of this information that you learn here and you actually promote it and propagate it. And so this is a beautiful way to begin his book, by kind of encouraging us to pay attention to these lessons, implement these lessons, and encourage others with these lessons. And so what is the reward of the one who preserves it, who revives it, and who calls to it? And that would be the difference between these things. Preserving it, i.e. learning it. Reviving it, i.e. implementing it. Carrying it with him where he goes and reestablishing it in different locations, as well as calling to it, i.e. actively promoting it. Now, so the lessons that we've been learning have been dealing with this topic. And we're now at narration 50, where the author, he says, أخبرنا أحمد بن عبيد قال أنبأنا محمد بن الحسين قال حدثنا أحمد بن زهير قال حدثنا محمد بن يزيد قال سمعت داود بن يحيى ابن يمان يحدث عن ابن المبارك قال ما رأيت أحدا أشرح للسنة من أبي بكر بن عياش. He says that Ahmed ibn Ubaidillah informed us. He said that Muhammad ibn al-Husayn informed us. He said that Ahmed ibn Zuhair narrated to us. He said that Muhammad ibn Yazid narrated to us. He said that I heard Dawood ibn Yahya ibn Yaman narrating on the authority of Ibn al-Mubarak. He narrated that Ibn al-Mubarak, he said, I have not seen anybody more, how would you translate this word? Like, I don't think this, like, with a better explanation, more clear and eloquent and capable of explaining the Sunnah. I have not seen anybody more capable of explaining the Sunnah than Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash was from the Atba' Tabi'een. He died in the year 193. He died in the year 193. So he actually dies after Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he died in the year 181. But Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash was a famous scholar of the people of Hadith. And this is Abdullah ibn Mubarak saying, I've never seen somebody more capable of explaining the Sunnah, explaining Islam and explaining Aqidah and explaining fundamentals than Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. And like we said, the author, he mentions these statements from time to time in this chapter just to lay the foundation of some of the people that we should be paying attention to in these issues, right? It's as if he's building us up to receive the information from these people by way of the way the others from the Salaf promoted them. When we talk about Abdullah bin Awn, and when we talk about Ayyub, and when we talk about Hamad, right, and Yunus, and all of these other people that we've talked about so far, how by speaking about who they were and their quality, it opens you up and readies you to receive their information. So now he's talking about Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. And Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash is the one who narrated these last two previous statements to us. The first one of them is where he said, explaining who is the Sunni. He said the one who, when the people of desires are mentioned, you don't find him clinging to or right particizing, right, becoming party, right, being a fanatic to any of it. That was one of the statements of Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. And then the other one that we mentioned last time was his statement that the Sunnah, as it relates to Islam, is more uncommon than Islam as it relates to the rest of the religions. And so this statement here about by Abdullah ibn Mubarak about Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash is just meant to drive home that point and to familiarize us with the value of such an imam who made those statements. He goes on, he says, أخبرنا علي بن محمد بن عبد الله قال حدثنا دعلج بن أحمد قال حدثنا إبراهيم بن محمود قال سمعت يونس بن عبيد قال سمعت يونس بن عبيد الأعلى قال سمعت يونس بن عبد الأعلى يقول سمعت أسد بن موسى, and Asad ibn Musa, Asad al-Sunnah, right? This is another imam, right? قال سمعت أسد بن موسى يقول كنا عند سفيان بن عيينة فنعي إليه الدراوردي فخرج وأظهر الجزع ولم يكن قد مات فقلنا ما علمنا أنك تبلغ مثل هذا قال إنه من أهل السنة. Now, he says that Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah informed us. He said that Da'laj ibn Ahmed narrated to us. I'm sorry. He said that Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah informed us. He said that Da'laj ibn Ahmed narrated to us. He said that Ibrahim ibn Mahmud narrated to us. He said that I heard Yunus ibn Abdul A'la saying that he heard Asad ibn Musa, who said, we were with Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, the imam from the Tabi'in. And the funeral or the death of Ad-Darawardi was announced, right? People had announced that Ad-Darawardi had died. Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad Ad-Darawardi, Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad Ad-Darawardi, if I'm not mistaken, Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad Ad-Darawardi. Blanking on his father's name, just let me double check. He died in the year, I want to say 183 as well, but let's see. Abdul Aziz, and I'm almost certain it's Ibn Muhammad Ad-Darawardi, from the famous narrators. Let's just go here. Ad-Darawardi. Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad ibn Ubaid ibn Abi Ubaid Ad-Darawardi Abu Muhammad al-Madani. Naam, and he died in the year مات سنة 86 أو 87 186 or 187. Naam, so Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad Ad-Darawardi was a famous scholar of hadith. Ibn Hajar, he says about him in Taqrib, Abu Muhammad al-Juhani مولاهم المدني صدوق كان يحدث من كتب غيره فيخطئ. قال النسائي حديثه عن عبيد الله العمري منكر من الثامنة مات سنة 6 أو 87. So even though his level in hadith was that of somebody that was saduq, right? He wasn't thiqah to the highest levels of righteousness and reliability, but he wasn't weak. He was in the middle. He was saduq. But in spite of that, and this is an important point, their imama in the sunnah wasn't based on their imama in hadith, right? A person, and that's why you see them mentioning them as two different categories. Somebody could be an imam in the sunnah, in the affairs of aqidah, in Islam, without necessarily being of the pinnacles in the science of hadith or the issues of hadith. And likewise, you might have somebody who was a high, eminent scholar in hadith that might have not have been as capable as it relates to affairs of the sunnah. And so this is an example of that, ad-Darawardi. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Asad ibn Musa, he says, we were with Sufyan ibn Uyayna when the death of ad-Darawardi was announced. And so he says, فَجَزِعَ وَأَظْهَرَ الْجَزَعَ. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he was flustered by that, right? You could tell that he was affected by it, and he made it clear that he was affected by it, right? It's not something that was concealed or hidden. It was obvious that he was affected by this news that ad-Darawardi had passed away. But he hadn't actually died. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ قَدْ مَاتَ, right? Ad-Darawardi hadn't actually died when that news was pronounced. And so we said, i.e. to Sufyan, مَا عَلِمْنَا أَنَّكَ تَبْلُغُ مِثْلَ هَذَا. We didn't think that you could get so bad. We didn't think that your affair could end up in this way. We didn't think that something would bother you that much. We didn't think that anything could affect you so extensively. And he said, إِنَّهُ مِنْ أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ. And that was a person from Ahl Sunnah. I.e., why would you not think that I would be so affected by it? Right? To find out that somebody from the people of the Sunnah died, of course it would affect me. Ad-Darawardi is from Ahl Sunnah. How could it not affect me? And that is a beautiful thing once you understand it. That losing the people of the Sunnah, regardless of where they're at, Mecca, Medina, right? It should affect the Muslims. It should be something that saddens us, because that is just one more person that has been lost who could preserve the Sunnah, revive the Sunnah, call to the Sunnah. And likewise, the reward of the people who do that is that you find the people who are on the Sunnah loving them and having this concern and this care for them. And so one of the clever things I think about this chapter is look at how he's ending it. He's coming to the conclusion mentioning how they, would feel about the death of somebody from the Sunnah, and how they would feel when somebody from the Sunnah ended up missing or ending, as a way of kind of closing this chapter off. Naam, he goes on, he says, أخبرنا عبد الرحمن ابن عمر إجازة قال أنبأنا محمد بن أحمد بن يعقوب قال حدثني جدي يعقوب بن شيبة قال حدثنا عثمان بن محمد قال أخبرنا أبو أسامة قال حدثنا سفيان قال أخبرني إبراهيم بن أبي حفصة بياع السابري قال قلت لعلي بن الحسين ناس يقولون لا ننكح إلا من كان على رأينا ولا نصلي إلا خلف من كان على رأينا قال علي بن الحسين ننكحهم بالسنة ونصلي خلفهم بالسنة. نعم. بياع السابري. I don't know what that word means. بياع السابري. What is a sabiri? Is it a name or an item? It has to be a name. Sabiri. إبراهيم بن بشار بياع السابري ذكره التوسي في رجال جعفر الصادق من الشيعة. بياع السابري أخذ عن الباقر. Does anybody mention what the word السابري mentions? Al-Uqayli, it must be an affiliation to a tribe. Al-Sabiri, because there's a lot of individuals who have this name, As-Sabiri. السابري بفتح الموحدة إلى نوع يعني نسبة إلى نوع من الثياب يسمى السابري. نعم، نوع من الثياب. ممتاز. السابري نوع من الثياب. نعم، السابري نوع من الثياب. So نعم, Al-Lalakai, he says that Abdul Rahman ibn Umar informed us by way of ijaza. He said that Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Yaqub narrated to us, informed us. He said that my grandfather narrated to me. My grandfather, Yaqub ibn Shayba, narrated to us. My grandfather, Yaqub ibn Shayba, narrated to us. He said that Uthman ibn Muhammad narrated to us. He said that Abu Usama informed us. He said that Sufyan, yani Sufyan al-Thawri, narrated to us. He said that Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa Bayya' al-Sabiri, that Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa, who used to sell al-Sabiri, right? This was his name, Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa, and he was known for being a garment salesman. Al-Sabiri is a affiliation to a type of a garment that they would sell. So he was known as the seller of As-Sabiri. Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa, he said, I said to Ali ibn al-Husayn, Zainul Abidin, Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? Who died in the year 94. He died in the Am al-Fuqaha, from the Kibar al-Tabi'in, and the best of them, the grandson of the Prophet al-Husayn, Ali ibn al-Husayn. He said that, yani Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa, Bayya' al-Sabir, he said, I said to Ali ibn al-Husayn. And Ali ibn al-Husayn is somebody that even the Shia, they respected him. And you find them often trying to attribute their religion to him, even though he was free of them just as his father and grandfather were. But because they have this claim of affiliation to the family of the Prophet ﷺ, you find them valuing Ali ibn al-Husayn. And so he's mentioning here that Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa, he said that I said to Ali ibn al-Husayn, there's a group of people that say we will only marry people, or we will only give in marriage to people who are on our opinion. Yani Shia. We will only marry our daughters to people who share our view. We're not going to marry to the rest of these people. If we have a daughter, we're only going to marry her to somebody who shares our view of this tashayyur, right? This claimed love and support of the family of the Prophet. That's what this group of people are saying. And they say, Ibrahim is telling Ali ibn al-Husayn, and they also say, we will not pray behind anybody unless they are on our opinion, unless they hold our view, right? We won't marry to anybody who's not a Shi'i, and we won't pray behind anybody who's not a Shi'i. And so he's saying this to Ali ibn al-Husayn, the Imam, right? One of the people that they think are one of the 12 Imams, if I'm not mistaken. They consider him one of the 12 Imams, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look that up later. That's not important. But so what did Ali ibn al-Husayn say to them, or say to Ibrahim ibn Abi Hafsa when he said this? He said, Qala Ali ibn al-Husayn, we marry them based on the Sunnah, and we pray behind them based on the Sunnah. Right? This is the criteria for which we establish the lines of friendship and enmity, love and aversion, al-wala wal-bara, affiliation and renouncing. These lines are based on Sunnah, not upon tashayyur. It's based not upon opinions. It's based upon the Sunnah. And this is the statement of Ali ibn al-Husayn, Zainul Abidin, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so he said, we marry people based on the Sunnah. We give in marriage to people based on the Sunnah. And we pray behind them based on the Sunnah. And so this also indicates some of the reward of the people who preserve, revive, and call to the Sunnah, that they will have this leadership and this prestige, right? They will have the option of being married to, they will have the imama based on this Sunnah that they're upon. That's how it connects to the chapter. He says, أخبرنا أحمد بن عبيد قال أنبأنا محمد بن الحسين قال حدثنا أحمد بن الزهير قال سمعت أحمد بن عبد الله بن يونس يقول امتحن أهل الموصل امتحن أهل الموصل بالمعافى ابن عمران فإن أحبوه فهم أهل السنة وإن أبغضوه فهم أهل بدعة كما يمتحن أهل الكوفة بيحيى. نعم. He says that Ahmed ibn Ubaid, he said, he informed us, he said that Muhammad ibn al-Hussein informed us, he said that Ahmed ibn Zuhair narrated to us. He said that I heard Ahmed ibn Abdullah ibn Yunus saying, test the people who are from Mosul with al-Mu'afa ibn Imran. Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran. I don't know much about him. Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran. Who is he? Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran. Naam. How many pages? Oh, 5 pages. In Tahdhib al-Kamal. 2 pages. Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran ibn Nufail ibn Jabir ibn Jabala ibn Ubaid ibn Labid ibn Mukhashin ibn Salama ibn Malik ibn Fahm al-Azdi al-Fahmi Abu Mas'ud al-Nufaili al-Mawsili, the scholar of fiqh, the worshipper. And it was said that his attribution was to other than them, i.e. other than what we mentioned before, al-Fahmi, al-Azdi. His hadith can be found in Bukhari, Dawood, Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i. Abu Zakaria al-Azdi, he said about him in the book, The History of Mosul. Mosul is a city in Iraq. He said he traveled to seek knowledge to all of the various regions, and he sat with the scholars, and he was a close companion of Thawri, and he learned from his mannerisms, and he understood the religion based on his education, based on the education that was given to him by Thawri. That's where he learned Islamic law and jurisprudence. And he was one who narrated in abundance on Thawri as well as other than him. And he wrote works in hadith regarding the Sunnah, the Aqidah, and other than that. And he was one who was aesthetic. He was a devout worshiper, righteous, noble, and honorable, with a sound intellect. Ali ibn al-Harb, he said about him, I saw him having to be an individual with a white head of hair and a beard. He had a white head of hair and beard. Abu Bakr ibn Abi Khaythama, Ahmed ibn Zuhair ibn Harb, one of the narrators in this chain, he said about him that he had a righteous statement. And this person used to speak with righteousness. Harb ibn Ahmed, he said that he was a sheikh who had a high value and a high importance. And he used to praise his condition often. And he would say he was a righteous person. Ibn Ma'in and Abu Hatim and Al-Ijli and Ibn Khirash, they said that this individual was thiqa. And likewise, Abu Zur'a, he said that he was a righteous slave of Allah. Ibn Sa'ad, he said about him that he was thiqa and he was an extremely good person, righteous or virtuous, and a person that was upon the Sunnah. Amr ibn Abdullah al-Azdi said on the authority of Waqi', who said that Al-Mu'afa narrated to us, and he was somebody who was reliable. And Bishr ibn al-Harith, he said that Ibn Mubarak said about him that حدثنا ذلك الرجل الصالح, that righteous man narrated to us, and he was referring to Al-Mu'afa on the authority of Bishr. And he would say that he said that Thawri used to say to Al-Mu'afa, you are Mu'afa, you are, free and excused and removed from faults, just like your name suggests. And he used to call him Yaquta, the pearl. And he would say that was what Sufyan used to say about him. And Ibn Ammar, he said, I didn't see anybody after him, i.e. after Mu'afa, who was better than him. And he said that I used to, kuntu inda Isa bin Yunus, I used to be with Isa bin Yunus. And he said to me, I saw Al-Mu'afa. He said to me, did you see Al-Mu'afa? And I said, yes. and he was ما أحسن أحدا رأي المعافى ما أحسب أحد رأى المعافى وسمع من غيره يريد الله تعالى بعلمه. He said that I didn't think that anybody would ever meet al-mu'afa and hear him talking and then think that anybody else only wanted to do it for Allah with their knowledge. And he said that Ahmed ibn Yunus said about al-Thawri that test the people of Mosul with mu'afa, right? So this same statement that we just mentioned here, where he mentions it on Abdullah ibn Yunus in Tadhib al-Kamal, they mentioned the addition, the intermediary, saying that it's Sufyan al-Thawri that he got it from. That Ahmed ibn Yunus, he said that al-Thawri said, test the people of Mosul with mu'afa. And additionally, Thawri, he also said, mu'afa gave me a gift of some books, and so I accepted it from him. And mu'afa was somebody who was qualified to do that. I qualified to give books of hadith away as a gift. He died in the year 185, and some of them say 186. So that is al-mu'afa. 100. Why do I got 159? Did I miss something? Comes with another thing with me. Yeah, I don't know why I put that there, but it should be 185. And some people say 186. Oh, yeah. Test the people of Mosul with Mu'afa ibn Imran. So Ahmed ibn Ubayd, based on this narration, he said that test the people of Mosul with al-Mu'afa ibn Imran. If they love him, then know that they are from the people of the Sunnah. And if they hate him, then know they are from the people of Bid'ah. And test the people of Kufa with Yahya. And Yahya, the people of Kufa with Yahya. Is that it's not Yazid ibn Harun. Who is this Yahya? The people of Kufa with Yahya. I feel like I know it. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Is that who it is? Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. That's what I think it is. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Yes, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, because I wrote here he died in the year 198, and that's the year Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan died. So now, he said, and test the people of Kufa with Yahya, yani Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Yeah, they say it right here in the footnotes. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan was a scholar from the people of Rijal, from the scholars of Jarh wa Ta'dil and the scholars of the Sunnah, and he was a student of Shu'bah and a close classmate of Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi. And so if you wanted to recognize if the person was on the Sunnah or not, and they were from Kufa, see how they felt about Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Our teacher, Sheikh Nurastani, rahimahullah, he said, وَهَذَا الْإِمْتِحَانُ تَكُونُ فِي. Is this Nurastani or somebody else? It might be from someone. He says, الامتحان تكون في من اجتمعوا على إمامته وهو لثبوته في السنة أما امتحان الناس بمختلف فيه من أهل السنة لإثبات بدعته والموافق لإثبات بدعة الموافق فليس من هذا. It's a good footnote here. I want to say it's from our Sheikh Nurastani, but it could be from others who we took this book from. But we wrote it down. It says that this type of testing that they used to do, right? First of all, we talked about that it's not from the Sunnah to test people via people, generally speaking, or by issues, but sometimes it was done, right? To know the status of a person. And so the Sheikh, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that the testing that is done in this regard, when you test a person by the people, then it is testing them by a person who his leadership and his imama is something that is agreed upon. And so by testing by testing a person by their stance on this individual who is agreed upon, then this is a way to know somebody's sunniyah or bid'iyah. Like if you say, what is their position from Bin Baz? What is their position from Sheikh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala? Then this is a way that these people are agreed upon. He says, as far as testing somebody as it relates to a person that is disagreed about, to determine if they are from the people of the Sunnah or if they are a person of bid'ah, then this is not the type of testing that was done by the Salaf. Right? Somebody who the scholars vary regarding his position. Right? And we can give an example. Right? We'll give an example, even though we try to avoid doing this at times. But somebody like Ali al-Halabi, rahimahullah ta'ala, right? This is a person where the statements of the people of knowledge who are agreed upon differed about him. So you had people like Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, hafidhahullah ta'ala, praising him and criticizing those who would cause mischief concerning his affair. And then you have people like Sheikh Rabi, hafidhahullah ta'ala, who would criticize him and who would criticize those who supported his affair. And so testing a person based on how they would feel, for example, about somebody like Ali al-Halabi, rahimahullah, then this is not the type of testing that the Salaf would do. Because this is a person who there is disagreement about, right? Testing a person based on their position as it relates to Sheikh Muhammad Hadi al-Madkhali, hafidhahullah. Right? This is not something the people of the Sunnah would do, because this is somebody where there's disagreement about him, right? Sheikh Rabi'a, hafidhahullah ta'ala, criticizes him and those who support him, while other mashayikh, numerous other mashayikh, support him. And so this is something where testing people in this fashion by trying to determine if they're on the Sunnah or against it by these individuals who there's disagreement about, then this is not the type of testing that the people of the Sunnah would do. As far as the testing that the people of the Sunnah would do based on personalities or based on individuals, then that would be those individuals who are well known and agreed upon their leadership in this field. And that's because a person's love for them, these people that are agreed upon in this topic, wasn't actually a love of the person, but it was a love of what the person represented. And if a person hated them, it wasn't actually a hatred of the person, it was a hatred of what the person represented. And so for that reason, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, a sign of the mu'min is the love of the Ansar, because the Ansar represent supporting Islam. And a sign of a hypocrite is the hate of the Ansar, because they hate that Islam be supported, right? How they would test the people about Abu Bakr and Umar, because Abu Bakr and Umar represented the Sunnah, while somebody who didn't like them while they claimed to love Ali would be a person of tashayyur and a person against the Sunnah. How they would test the people with Imam Ahmed, because Imam Ahmed represented the Sunnah. If a person had a problem with Imam Ahmed, then it wasn't that they had a problem with the personality, it's that they had a problem with what he represented. And so this is the type of testing that is being referred to here. Test the people of Mosul with Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran. So if they love him, then know that they are the people of the Sunnah. And if they hate him, then know that they are the people of Bid'ah. Just as the people of Kufa are tested, i.e. by seeing their position as it relates to Yahya. Yani Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Naam. He says, أخبرنا الحسن بن عثمان ومحمد بن أحمد بن سهل قال أنبأنا محمد بن أحمد بن الحسن قال حدثنا جعفر بن محمد قال سمعت قتيبة يقول إذا رأيت الرجل يحب أهل الحديث مثل يحيى بن سعيد وعبد الرحمن بن مهدي وأحمد بن محمد بن حنبل وإسحاق بن راهوية وذكر قوما آخرين آخرين فإنه على السنة ومن خالف هؤلاء فاعلم أنه مبتدع. He says that Al-Hasan ibn Uthman informed us, as well as Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Sahal. The two of them said that Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn al-Hasan informed us. He said that Ja'far ibn Muhammad narrated to us. He said that I heard Qutayba, and this is Qutayba ibn Sa'd. Qutayba ibn Sa'd Abu Raja, Qutayba ibn Sa'id ibn Jamil ibn Taraf al-Baghlani, right, who died in the year 240, right? Abu Raja Qutaybah ibn Sa'id ibn Tarif ibn Jamil al-Baghlani, right? Now, the famous scholar of hadith. So Ja'far ibn Muhammad, he said that I heard Qutaybah, who said, if you see a person who loves the people of hadith, like Yahya ibn Sa'id, and Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, and Abdul Rahman ibn Mahdi, and Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal, and Ishaq ibn Rahuya, and he mentioned others besides them, he said, then this person is on the Sunnah. A person who loves the people of hadith, then this person is on the Sunnah. وَمَنْ خَالَفَ هَؤُلَاءِ, and whoever opposes these individuals. And that's a good way to word it, right? It's not just that they have a dislike, like maybe somebody has a personal beef in the dunya, but whoever opposes these individuals, meaning they are against what they stand for, then know that that person is a mubtadi'. If somebody doesn't stand for what Yahya bin Sa'id or Abdul Rahman or Imam Ahmed or Ishaq amongst these other individuals stood for, then what are they standing for other than bid'ah? And so like this, Qutaybah ibn Sa'id, he's mentioning this so that we can understand. Now, we're finishing up. He says, أخبرنا أحمد بن محمد بن حفص قال حدثنا عبد الله بن عدي قال حدثنا أحمد بن محمد بن عبدوية قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن عمر رسته وسأله فضلك الرازي قال حدثنا أزهر عن ابن عون قال من مات على الإسلام والسنة فله بشير بكل خير. He says that Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hafs informed us. He said that Abdullah ibn Adi narrated to us. He said that Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Abduyah narrated to us. He said that Abdul Rahman ibn Umar Rusta narrated to us. And he had asked Fadlak al-Razi. Fadlak al-Razi was a well-known scholar. He said that Haddathana Azhar, that Azhar had narrated to us on the authority of Ibn Aoun, yani Abdullah ibn Aoun, who said, whoever dies on Islam and Sunnah, then he has the good news of all goodness. He has the glad tidings of all types of goodness. Now, so just a footnote here for anybody when they're reading it. It says Abdul Rahman ibn Umar Rusta. Rusta in Persian means the truthful one, right? So it's describing who he is. Abdul Rahman ibn Umar Rusta, yani as-Sadiq. And Fadlak, from the benefits they mention, is that the kaf in Persian is a way to small or to beloved, or to like when you put it on tasghir. Fudayl in Arabic they would say Fudayl, but in Persian they would say Fadlak. Ala kulli hal, Abdullah bin Aoun, he says, whoever dies on Islam and Sunnah, right? So it's not enough to be a Muslim to receive these glad tidings. You have to be a Muslim on the Sunnah. Then he has the glad tidings of all goodness. And this is from the reward of those who preserve the Sunnah, call to the Sunnah, revive the Sunnah, that they have the good or the glad tidings in this not life as well as the next. And so this shows us the reward of those who are upon the Sunnah. And like we say, this is like the author showing us that we're getting to the end of the chapter, talking about some of the affairs of the people who have these qualities with the Sunnah as it relates to death. And that's just like a subtlety that you might pick up on as you're reading the chapters. Like they know what they're doing on how they organize things. That's why we pay so much attention to it. He says, وَأَخْبَرَنَا أَحْمَدْ قَالَ أَنْبَأَنَا عَبْدُ اللَّهِ قال حدثني أحمد بن العباس الهاشمي قال حدثنا محمد بن عبد الأعلى قال سمعت معتمر بن سليمان يقول دخلت على أبي وأنا منكسر فقال ما لك؟ قلت مات صديق لي قال مات على السنة؟ قلت نعم قال فلا تحزن عليه. الله أكبر. He said that Ahmed informed us. He said that Abdullah informed us. He said that Ahmed ibn al-Abbas al-Hashimi narrated to me. He said that Muhammad ibn Abdul A'la narrated to us. He said that I heard Mu'tamar ibn Sulaiman, who said, I entered upon my father and I was devastated. I was broken up. I was broken, right? I was really broken by the death of one of his companions. He said, and I was broken up. And so he said, what's wrong with you? And I replied, a friend of mine died. And so he said, did he die on the Sunnah? To which I replied, yes. And he said, then don't be sad about him. Don't grieve for him. He died on the Sunnah. Don't grieve for him, right? Don't mourn for him. He died upon goodness, right? And that shows us the reward of the people who die upon the Sunnah, that there's no sorrow, no fear upon them. وَلَهُمْ بُشْرَى. He says, أخبرنا الحسن بن عثمان قال حدثنا أحمد بن سلمان قال حدثنا محمد بن جعفر قال حدثنا الحسن قال حدثني رجل قال حدثني بشر بن الحارث قال معافى بن عمران لا تحمدن رجلا إلا عند الموت. الله أكبر. إما يموت على السنة أو يموت على بدعة. نسأل الله الثبات. نسأل الله الثبات إلى الممات. This is an amazing statement, an important statement. He says that Al-Hasan ibn Uthman informed us. He said that Ahmad ibn Salman narrated to us. He said that Muhammad ibn Ja'far narrated to us. He said that Al-Hasan narrated to us. He said that a man narrated to me who said that Bishr ibn al-Harith narrated to me, who said that Mu'afa ibn Imran, right? Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran, who we just talked about a second ago, died in the year 185. Mu'afa ibn Imran, he said, don't praise. You should not for sure praise anybody until they die. Don't praise anybody until they die, because they will either die on the Sunnah or they will die upon bid'ah, right? So, and this is reminiscent of the statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, man kana mustannan falyastanna biman qad mat fa inna al-hayy la yu'man alayhi al-fitna. Whoever is going to follow somebody's example, then let him follow the example of the people who have already died, because the one who is alive, he's not safe from falling into a fitna. And so Mu'afa is saying, don't praise anybody until they die, right? Because you might praise them and then their situation changes, and then they use this praise as a way of promoting their falsehood. But instead, don't praise anybody until they die, because they'll either die on the Sunnah and then you can praise them, or they will die on bid'ah and you wouldn't have fallen into any danger because you had praised them while they were alive. And obviously this statement isn't, absolute, but it is a good principle and a good concept, like to be conscious and well aware of what you're saying and what you're doing and the repercussions that might come out of it. Because we've all experienced how today somebody promotes and praises this individual, and then tomorrow they criticize them and remove them from the group of Salafiyah. And so for those individuals where that criticism was warranted and valid, it would have been better had they never praised that individual to begin with. And so this is the statement of Mu'afa. And the benefit is that the people who die on the Sunnah, then these are from their rewards is that they are entitled to this praise upon their death, right? So that's how it connects to the chapter. But as we see, the author is closing up. So he's mentioning these athar that deal with the person on the Sunnah at death, and that have the mentioning of death in it. The last narration in this chapter, he says, أخبرنا عيسى بن علي قال أنبأنا عبد الله بن محمد البغوي قال حدثنا أبو سعيد الأشج قال حدثني عمران بن غياث الفزاري الزيات قال أخبرني أبو امرأتي قال أبو سعيد فسألته عن اسم أبي امرأتي فقال عبد الله بن شيرزاد قال كنت بعبادان فرأيت في المنام كأن رجلا جيء به في ثياب بياض فوضع في سفينة قلت من هذا الذي قد مات على الإسلام والسنة ونجا فلما ارتفع النهار جاءنا الخبر أن سفيان الثوري مات في تلك الليلة. Now, the city Abadan, I think it's in Iran if I'm not mistaken. Abadan is in Iran. Now, Abadan is a city in Iran that is to the southeast of Basra in Iraq. So it's on the border of Iraq and Iran, to the southeast of Basra. Nowadays, they spell it with a Hamza, Abadan, but they used to spell it with an Ain, Abadan. Now, Allah Ta'ala. So this narration, he says that Isa ibn Ali informed us. He said that Abdullah ibn Muhammad al-Baghawi, right? That famous Imam, Abdullah ibn al-Qasim al-Baghawi, he informed us. He said that Abu Sa'id al-Ashaj narrated to us. He said that Imran ibn Ghiyath al-Fazari narrated to me. Imran ibn Ghiyath al-Fazari az-Zayyat, the seller of oil, he narrated to me. He said that the father of my wife informed me. And Abu Sa'id al-Ashaj, he said, I asked him, what was the name of the father of your wife? And he said his name was Abdullah ibn Shirazad. Now, he says that his father-in-law said to him, we were in Abadan, right? Once we were in Abadan, and I saw in my dream, I saw while sleeping, it was as if a man was brought in white clothing, and he was placed on a ship. And so I said, who is this person who has died upon Islam and Sunnah and received salvation? So when the morning had come, right, when the morning had risen, the information arrived to us that Sufyan al-Thawri had died that night. And so this is a dream that the father-in-law of al-Fazari, Imran ibn Ghiyath al-Fazari, saw, right, Abdullah ibn Shirazad, that he said he saw an individual while sleeping who was brought in white garments, right? The white garments signify being wrapped in the shroud for being dead, right? So this is where he got this concept that the individual had died. And he said he was placed on a ship. And we all know that statement that the ship, the Safina of Nuh, right? The Sunnah is like the ship of Noah, alayhi salatu wasalam. Whoever rides on it receives salvation. And whoever stays away from it is drowned and destroyed. And so when he saw this person wrapped in white garments placed on a ship, he understood that this individual had died, but they had died upon Islam and Sunnah and thus were saved, right? They had obtained salvation. And so he said to himself in the dream, who is this individual who has died upon Islam and Sunnah and escaped or received salvation? And then when the morning had come, the news had reached them that Sufyan al-Thawri had died that night. Sufyan al-Thawri, who died in the year 161. And so, like this, it was a good dream that Allah inspired to this individual. There's probably others who were given the good news about this individual. And that's from the rewards of the people who die upon the Sunnah, that good news will reach their loved ones. Right? Allah will inspire in their dreams. People will often have good dreams about people who died upon the Sunnah and see them in their sleep. And in the visiting of the souls of the dead and the people who are asleep, there's another conversation. But like that, we finished the author's chapter, and we can now move into the next chapter. And these next chapters, some of them will have length to them, and some of them won't be as long, right? This next chapter only has about 20 something narrations in it. The next chapter being the siyaq ma fussira min kitabillahi azza wa jal min al-ayati fil hathi ala al-tiba wa anna sabil al-haq huwa as-sunnah wal-jama'ah. The context regarding what has been explained from the book of Allah azza wa jal, from the various ayat that encourage following, and that the path that leads to the truth, or the true path, the path of truth, is the Sunnah and their group. So he's going to be giving us a chapter of some of the statements of the Salaf, giving tafsir of some of the various ayat that show the importance of following the Sunnah, and that the path that is to be followed is the Sunnah and the group that is on that path. So we look forward to that chapter, inshallah. We'll begin it next time. That's chapter 3 from the author. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. لا بأس. Until this moment, I still haven't decided if or what we will do for Ramadan. As far as personally, our Sheikh Bandar al-Maimuni, inshallah, Yawm al-Sabt will continue to go over Minhaj al-Salikin, but specifically the book of fasting in Ramadan. And our Sheikh Abu Salah, Muhammad bin Hisham al-Tahiri, Hafidhullah, he will continue the Adab al-Mufrad on his regularly scheduled program during Ramadan. And perhaps that will continue except the last week. But as far as me personally, I haven't decided, will I continue, will I alter, or will I do anything during Ramadan yet? It's a must, the Muslim. I don't understand that. It's a must, the Muslim love the people of the Sunnah in every time area. Yes, it is a must. So you can say, I don't know anything except good from the person, like I know him to be upon the Sunnah. Is that considered praise? Yes, that's praise. But like I said, the statement isn't absolute. And when praising somebody, from the things that the Salaf would say was nahsabuhu wallahu hasibuhu wa la nuzaki ala Allahi ahada, nahsabuhu kadha wa kadha. Right? We think about him, and Allah is the one who knows about him and who is his reckoner. And we don't praise anybody, before Allah. We think about him though that he's like this and that. And like I say, it's not an absolute thing. Sometimes a person deserves the praise, and that is like the main point of it is to be conscious. Like we mentioned last time in this lesson or another one, how people start throwing terms around willy-nilly. Everybody's a sheikh, everybody's an imam, everybody's the allama, everybody's the baqiyatu salaf, right? And no, everybody's not that. Everybody's not Sheikh al-Islam. So be conscious. If you're going to talk about somebody, talk about them for what you know about them. And talk about them for what you know about them when you need to talk about them. If there's no need to talk about them, and this is good or bad, then there's nothing needed to be said. But if you see that a brother who is a Salafi brother in a community and the people don't know who he is, and they ask you, is this a brother we can benefit in this class or the third? Then you can speak good about him. Yeah, this is a brother I know, we studied together. Inshallah, he's a good brother. I've traveled with him. I've experienced good from him. I don't know anything bad about him, etc., etc. Just like likewise, if there's a brother who is upon some deviation or falsehood, and somebody brings to you his situation, and you can say, no, be careful from that guy. I've heard him lie before. I've experienced him doing this or that. But just generally, it's about speaking with consideration. Do we just go around because somebody agrees with us that they're the best thing? And if they disagree with us, then they're the worst thing? No, we speak about people with what we know. And if it's going to be praised, then we're conscious of how that praise can affect. And so I'm not going to talk about, and it's not something that's even disrespectful. Like I have brothers of mine who I think the world of, who I think are very capable and qualified and righteous people, and who I think that there's an extreme amount of benefit that can be gotten from them. But for example, when we talk about them, we'll say my brother said, right? Or a friend of mine said. It won't be the sheikh, the allama, the doctor, etc., etc. It'll just be the brother said. Our brother said this. As to not unnecessarily influence somebody. We'll speak good about them with what we know. And when they die, if we're allowed to live after them, then we'll talk about them. And then some people reach that level while they're alive. And so, like I said, it's not an absolute hard and fast rule, but it's something to be conscious of, because what you say, it's going to affect. If you talk good about somebody, they can use that later on, even if their situations change. Like when we talked about the story of Ikrimah and the people who considered him to be away from the correct path, they would say, well, he was relying on old, outdated information. And we see this. And so you want to be conscious of how you promote and praise people. Or zuhud of the Salaf. Can we do jewelry books or zuhud of the Salaf? Potentially. I don't know. Inshallah. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.